From beautiful Broadcast Park in the posh Studio A, you're listening to the Conservative Underground. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Doc White here, your humble host. Proud to be humble of the Conservative Underground. Thank you for joining this podcast today. Rush Limbaugh made some news, I think it was earlier this week, when he referred to President Obama as a dictator. And it's not often that I disagree with Rush, and I immediately thought, wow, that seems to be a wild statement, I guess you could call it, off the top. And I began to think about this. And it wasn't so much that I was sitting there listening to Rush, wanting him to convince me that he was right. I began to digest, because I had to go off and do other things, to digest the statement that Obama is like a dictator, or is a dictator. And I thought about what he said the other day, that he's not going to wait for Congress to act. He's got a pen, he's got a phone, he's got executive power. And I began to then go back from there and started to put the puzzle together. How he began to appoint people who couldn't win approval in a Democrat-controlled Senate, his people, to the National Labor Relations Board. How he and the Democrats who controlled the Senate ended the 60-vote requirement to proceed with judges, something that he had supported when Bush was in office, and most of the Democrats. How President Obama couldn't get various aspects of immigration reform passed, so they, through executive order, implemented the DREAM Act, which failed in Congress. They have, through executive order or just policy directives, delayed and changed parts of Obamacare, which was supposed to be the law of the land. And I begin to think to myself, maybe there's something to what Rush is saying here. This is certainly not a person who's president of the United States that happens to be very comfortable with the restraints on the office that's placed in the Constitution of the United States. Clearly someone who doesn't favor limited government. This is an individual who has championed government at every possible turn. So the question is, do we have a dictator, I guess, or do we have someone who thinks he is a dictator? And to the first instance, unless we, the people, begin to check the power of the presidency through our elections process, we will have a dictator as president. It's happened before in democracies. And unless we, the people, this November, check this president through electing conservatives to Congress, we will enable the person who does think he is a dictator because of what he's done. I've got an agenda here of topics to get to. Obama's press conference on NSA spying, the economy. At what point does it become his problem? NFL playoffs, the death penalty. Is America becoming more liberal? Hate speech, Snooki, and much, much more on this edition of the Conservative Underground. Thanks for being a part of this broadcast, as always, taking on the liberal loony left from a conservative standpoint. Limited government, personal freedom, and individual liberty is the pillars of this show. And I had a post over at the website, conservativeunderground1776.blogspot.com. And I want to thank everyone who has visited the webpage, listened to the podcast, liked the Facebook fan page of the Conservative Underground. And I've been doing this internet podcast since 2009, entering year 6 this April. And when you count the years I used to record the show on a cassette tape and play it back to whomever was at my house, I trace my talk radio days, quote, unquote, back to, I would say, probably 1987. So in a sense, I guess you could say that I've been at this longer than Rush Limbaugh. Radio podcasting is a passion, though. It's theater of the mind. Also, it's about promoting conservative values, limited government, personal responsibility, and individual liberty. And I, and many like me, Tea Party patriots, grassroots conservatives, take to the airwaves, the internet, the blogs, whatever, from sea to shining sea, because the Constitution is under attack, the Republic is under attack. Many want to turn what has worked so well for over 200 years upside down because they think somehow that the system isn't fair, or it's not compassionate enough, or they just want power for themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, big and bloated government run by bureaucrats hidden in the halls of whatever agency in Washington, D.C., will not solve our problems. Common sense and freedom, real freedom, trump compassion. Lower taxes provides more wealth to more people than higher rates. Less regulation provides more opportunities in a safer community. The idea of we the people, says it in the Declaration of Independence, that we the people are in charge, and we are, and that the best government is a checked government, have done more to promote the livelihoods of more people and preserve freedom and liberty than any empty phrase like hope and change or some rebranded car salesman type person wrapped up as President of the United States. And you know who I'm talking about. So we have to keep up the fight. We got to stay strong, carry on. The country that we all love and that many have fought and died for depend on you and I and many others to speak up. So that's the opening message that I wanted to deliver to you all today on the Conservative Underground. I have with me here, broadcasting from the posh Studio A here, my Chief of Staff, Brett Myers, my Social Media Coordinator, Mitch Wainwright, my technician, Sid Nelson, and Research Specialist, Dr. Beth Lookner, and our intern on the Conservative Underground show, Miss and the lovely Miss Maggie Moynahue. Thank you very much, everyone. So I began the broadcast by talking about, Rush Limbaugh's statement that President Obama is a dictator, or like a dictator. And it was a wild statement when I heard it. And when you sit and listen and look, actually when you sit down and you digest everything that he's done, you have to come to the conclusion, you might think he's a nice guy, but he views his office and himself as above certain traditional trappings that are checked in our Constitution. You can't argue otherwise. Now, is Barack Obama the only person to think that? Certainly not. It almost seems like in every state or every administration, when you're dealing with the executive, there is this temptation to be all and do all. And if you understand history and understand our formation as a republic, you know that our founding fathers foresaw all of that, and they feared it, which is why they placed certain checks on the executive from the judiciary and the legislative primarily. Without a doubt, the legislature is the preeminent branch at any level in our federal system. So we, the people, then have to prevent dictators and not allow people who think they are dictators to act in a certain way. So the president was on television talking about the National Security Agency and their, I guess people are calling it, and I don't think I would disagree, obviously they're spying on the American people. I thought there's some people have classified the United States here as simply a police state. Report after report after report for several months now, and I might add that the administration has been pretty silent on all of this, have surfaced that the National Security Agency are cataloging more than metadata. They're cataloging text messages to the tune of maybe 200 million per day. They not only are cataloging the fact that we make phone calls, but they're cataloging the numbers that are called and perhaps maybe even listening in on the conversations. We're also now hearing reports that the NSA can access your computer and turn on your web camera. I've often joked that from time to time when I open the broadcast, I'll talk about doing the show bunkered in the palatial Studio B to avoid the NSA drones in surveillance. Now, that used to be funny, but now it's sort of a reality. The government is reading our emails. They, for a long period of time, have cataloged tweets. I think in the Library of Congress, they have saved every tweet ever twitted. Is that the right word? I'm looking over to my social media coordinator, Mitch Wainwright. Every tweet ever tweeted. It's not twitted. Okay. So, what does our government know about us? Probably a lot. Probably a lot more than what we think. And we all have to assume that when we participate in society, when we leave our home, when we travel, that there will be some surveillance, be it on the streets, be it when you enter a building, for security purposes. And you even should assume and accept the risks of doing transactions on the internet, that could possibly be hacked or monitored. But what we should not reasonably expect nor tolerate is that private interactions, emails, calls, messages, would be monitored and data collected by the government. Now, I don't know what President Obama talked about in his press conference. I was doing some work. But what I can tell you, in my opinion, is it seems as if it's interesting timing that the president now takes up this NSA issue about reining in the security agencies that he oversees as president of the United States. This is an executive issue. When we have Benghazi now resurfacing, faltering Obamacare rollout and administration of that law, the economy tanking and has been so. Why now does he decide to talk about this? Well, they're going to create a blue ribbon panel or something like that to issue some recommendations, punt most of that responsibility off to Congress or ignore it. So the timing of all of this is interesting, but needless to say, it is an issue, and it's a part of the ever-growing scandals of this administration. Things that are happening that Obama doesn't know about or was maybe playing golf when it happened and he's not personally held accountable for, like the economy. But whatever happens here in all of this, we as Americans have a right not to be eavesdropped on by our government. That doesn't suggest that there is a right to privacy inherent in the Constitution. There just is inherent in the Constitution itself and from